fertilization, this is an interesting quote. So this quote says, at its core, this issue, which is the idea of stem cells, forces us to confront fundamental questions about the beginnings of life and the ends of science. It lies at a difficult moral intersection, juxtaposing the need to protect life in all of its phases with the prospect of saving and improving life in all of its stages. So that's a fantastic quote. That's just condenses into like 2 sentences so much of the complicated process of figuring out what to do with stem cells. That was George Bush. Yeah. So that was a lead into something that I'll tell you about a little bit later. So to get the whole context of stem cells for a really sort of secondary reason ended up being, or maybe I'd say it this way. In vitro fertilization kind of got in some ways wrapped up in the topic of Roe versus Wade when it first got off the ground. So Roe versus Wade was in 1973, and it's not that important to get into the exact details of that, but one of the things that came out right at that time was that the idea that the Department of Health and Human Services, or Welfare at the time, said, fertilization, we are not going to commit any federal funds to that topic unless there's an advisory board that actually addresses ethical or not ethical to do in vitro fertilization. So that was 1973, and that was going to be unless there was an ethics board convened to address that topic. So does anybody have a guess of when the ethics board was actually convened? Do you go back to the beginning of the talk? Yeah, 1978, right? So there was this idea that we won't invest federal funds in vitro fertilization until an ethics board meets. The ethics board isn't going to meet. Then 1978 comes up and you had to convene that council. And if you also look a little bit forward to what Ian Wilmot did in 1997, he ended up having this really prescient thought process where he sort of predicted the future. I think in many ways he's predicting the future of part of what we're going to see in stem cells right now, which is that the practical difficulty comes in getting people to discuss things which are still hypothetical. It comes with a bump once they become reality. So in 1978, that's really what happened to everybody who was thinking about what's going to happen with in vitro fertilization. Are we going to fund it? Are we not going to fund it? Boom, all of a sudden 1978 happens. It's not theoretical, it's happened, right? And then you have to sort of pick up the pieces after the fact, right? So science and progress sort of moves forward whether we fund it or not. It's just a question of how it actually happens. And I know you're not going to be able to read the details of this, but I pulled a couple of pieces of this out. This is a legal brief that sort of discussed the ethics of stem cells right in 1979. And they looked back on it, and they highlighted exactly what I just said, which was that Joy Brown, the first test tube baby, was born in '78, and then interestingly, she was born in July. By September of '78, the ethics board met, right? So these things happen really quickly once you get, reality sort of like, pushing on you. And then even in 1979, they said, what's going to happen to the excess embryos or the excess cell masses from these fertilized eggs? Are they going to be used in any science in the future? That's 1978. They're already starting to predict. Is this going to be scientifically relevant? And now I'm going to get to your question about China and other places. And they said, one of the other things that's really important is, although the board never really addressed it, there's a question of the motivated patient. And so they said, how can determined couples be protected from unknown risks in undertaking in vitro fertilization without recommending public funds for research into clinical trials? So they're bringing up this idea, if somebody has a condition that they're motivated enough to do, whatever, go to China or, go try and get stuff done, and there aren't federal funds for it, are you really protecting the public interest, right? And that topic, and getting to your topic about what the determined patient is, I think there's the question of determined patients right now for stem cells. There's a question of, should people go to China and pay large sums of money to get stem cell treatments? And you can go online. I don't endorse this site at all, but the point is you can go online to places like China Stem Cell News. There's a list over on the side here. This is just the A's. So from ALS down to this is ataxia, that's autism. You can imagine how far down this list goes, where they say they'll consult with you about just about anything. And then this, wondering if stem cell treatment is right for you, click here and get a clinical consult, right? So, right now there are these organizations that put these sort of slick things together so you can go online and take a look at whether you should pay $40,000 to fly to China and get an unproven treatment. So one of the things that actually I think is a really fantastic thing that happened even in the last few months, this was printed in May of this year, is that as a whole consortium, not just physicians like myself and not just groups like the Christopher Reeves Foundation, they came out with the concept of saying, can we endorse this? Does it make sense to not have a policy statement? And they came out with a really pretty clear policy statement, which they said that at least for the places that are going to charge large sums of money for patients to come and get these treatments done, it's very difficult to believe that they're going to be able to, say, independently assess the quality of the procedures that they're doing. And they said that those should be put under, quite a bit of concern before patients would go and do that. So I would really encourage you to, if you're really interested in the topic, to find this. You can download this off the internet for $19, and you can read the whole thing. Or if you went to a library that carried this is actually in stem cell, or sorry, this is in spinal cord. So I don't know if you find it in any library, but this is a really good thing to have. And whenever I do this talk for healthcare providers, I always encourage them to go back to this and have it, because there's so many times when people come to me and say, well, should I go and get this treatment done? And I can say that it's not just me as a physician who you think may have like a particular opinion about it saying this. Physicians, scientists, advocacy groups have really come together and said that this, at least for the people who are really charging these exorbitant amounts of money for it, it's very difficult to believe that they're going to police themselves.